Zexthol's 4 eyes gleamed with disdain as he examined the primitive projectile weapons displayed on his ship's viewing platform. The human delegation stood awkwardly nearby, their simple cloth uniforms a stark contrast to the gleaming metallic surfaces of his advanced starship. As one of the galaxy's most successful arms dealers, Zexthol had seen weapons from 1,000 worlds, each more sophisticated than the last. These Earth weapons looked like museum pieces. You call these firearms? Zexthol's voice carried the distinctive harmonic undertones of his species, the Vorthak. His elongated fingers traced the air above an assault rifle, careful not to actually touch the crude metal. On Kepler 442b, children play with more advanced weaponry than this. Captain Sarah Martinez, leading the human delegation, maintained her composure despite the obvious insult. She had expected this reaction. Earth was new to the galactic community, having only made first contact 18 months ago. Their technology lagged behind most civilized worlds by centuries, if not millennia. But she knew something the arrogant alien didn't. "We understand our weapons appear primitive," Martinez replied diplomatically. "However, we believe they possess certain qualities that might interest someone in your line of work." Zexthol's mandibles clicked in what passed for laughter among his kind. His ship, the Prophet's Edge, housed the most extensive private weapons collection in 3 sectors. Plasma rifles that could vaporize targets at the molecular level lined the walls. Energy weapons capable of punching through starship hulls hung from specialized mounts. Gravitational disruptors that could crush enemies into singularities occupied secure displays. Qualities? Zexthol gestured grandly at his collection. Human Martinez observed these Altarian pulse cannons. They fire concentrated energy bursts at near light speed. A single shot can level a building. Or perhaps these Centauri neural disruptors? They scramble an opponent's nervous system instantly, leaving them paralyzed but conscious to experience their defeat. Dr. James Chen, the delegation's weapons specialist, stepped forward. Impressive indeed. But tell me, Zexthol, what happens when those energy weapons encounter electromagnetic pulse fields, or when their power sources are depleted? The arms dealer's eyes narrowed. Such scenarios are unlikely. Advanced civilizations maintain adequate power infrastructure and shielding. But possible, Chen pressed. Theoretically, Zexthol admitted reluctantly. Martinez sensed an opening. Our kinetic weapons operate on different principles entirely. No power source required beyond the chemical energy stored in each projectile. No electronic systems to be disrupted. No energy signatures to detect, Zexthol waved dismissively. Chemical propulsion is laughably primitive. The projectile velocities are pathetic compared to energy weapons. The range is limited. The destructive power is minimal. Perhaps, Chen said calmly, but consider the advantages. Our ammunition is cheap to mass produce. Our weapons are reliable in any environment. They function in electromagnetic storm fields, underwater, in vacuum during solar flares, or in the presence of jamming technology that would render your energy weapons useless. The alien arms dealer began pacing, his multiple limbs moving in complex patterns that indicated deep thought among his species. Even granting those points, the tactical applications are severely limited. Your projectiles cannot penetrate modern armor systems. They lack the stopping power necessary for contemporary warfare. Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez, the delegation's military advisor, spoke up. That depends entirely on the projectile design and velocity. We've developed specialized ammunition for various scenarios. Armor-piercing rounds with depleted uranium cores. Explosive-tipped projectiles for area denial. Hollow-point bullets designed for maximum tissue damage. Tissue damage? Zexthol's translator struggled with the concept. You design weapons specifically to harm biological matter rather than disable equipment? Sometimes the most effective way to stop an enemy is to stop the person operating their equipment, Martinez explained. Zexthol paused his pacing. In his centuries of arms dealing, he had encountered weapons designed for every conceivable purpose. Weapons that could disintegrate matter, freeze targets in temporal loops, or convert enemy soldiers into loyal servants. But most advanced civilizations had moved beyond deliberately targeting biological entities. Their warfare focused on disabling technology, disrupting communications, or achieving territorial control through superior firepower. This is barbaric, he said finally. Perhaps, Chen acknowledged, but effective. Our weapons evolved from hunting tools. They were designed from the beginning to take down living creatures quickly and efficiently. The arms dealer's expression grew thoughtful. You speak of hunting. Most civilized species abandoned such practices eons ago when they developed synthetic nutrition. Humans are different, Martinez said simply. We maintained our predatory instincts even as we developed technology. Our weapons reflect that heritage. Zexthul examined the human delegation with new interest. They appeared deceptively harmless, bipedal creatures with soft skin and no visible natural weapons. Yet they spoke casually of designing instruments specifically to kill living beings. It was either the most primitive barbarism he had encountered or something far more sophisticated than he initially recognized. Show me, he demanded suddenly. Martinez blinked. I'm sorry? Demonstrate these weapons. I have testing facilities aboard my ship. Let me see these kinetic projectiles in action against modern defensive systems. The human delegation exchanged glances. This was the moment they had hoped for. But Martinez wanted to be certain. You're requesting a live fire demonstration? Indeed. If these primitive weapons possess the qualities you claim, prove it. I'll provide targets equipped with standard galactic defense technology, energy shields, reactive armor, electromagnetic barriers. Show me what your chemical propulsion can accomplish against real military hardware. Chen smiled slightly. We'd be happy to demonstrate, but I should warn you, our weapons might perform better than you expect. Zexthul's mandibles clicked again. Dr. Chen, I have witnessed the testing of weapons that could crack moons. I think I can handle whatever surprises your primitive projectiles might offer. Very well, Martinez agreed. We accept your offer to test our firearms against your defensive systems. As the delegation was escorted to the ship's testing facility, Zexthul found himself experiencing an unfamiliar sensation. Was it possible that these primitive humans had discovered something that the galaxy's most advanced civilizations had overlooked? The thought seemed absurd, yet their confidence was oddly compelling. The testing chamber stretched nearly a kilometer in length, with observation windows of reinforced transparent aluminum. Various target systems were already in place, their defensive arrays humming with energy. Zexthul had used this facility to test weapons worth millions of galactic credits. He was curious to see how Earth's crude kinetic weapons would embarrass themselves against proper military technology. He had no idea that he was about to witness a demonstration that would fundamentally change his understanding of warfare itself. The testing chamber fell silent as Dr. Chen methodically assembled his demonstration equipment. Unlike the sleek crystalline weapons lining Zexthul's displays, the human firearms appeared almost comically simple. Metal tubes attached to wooden or polymer stocks with basic mechanical triggers and iron sights. The arms dealer's confidence grew with each passing moment. Before we begin, Chen announced, I'd like to understand exactly what defensive systems we'll be testing against. Zexthul gestured toward the far end of the chamber where 3 distinct target arrays waited. The first employs standard Andromedan energy shielding, capable of deflecting particle beams and plasma bursts. The second features Rigelian reactive armor that adapts to incoming energy signatures. The third combines both systems with additional electromagnetic interference fields. Impressive, Rodriguez murmured, studying the targets through the observation window. Each defensive system glowed with different colored energy patterns, creating an almost beautiful light show in the darkened chamber. These systems, Zexthul continued proudly, represent the pinnacle of defensive technology from the most militarily advanced civilizations in known space. Your kinetic weapons will simply bounce off like pebbles thrown at a starship hull. Martinez watched Chen as he loaded a single round into what appeared to be a basic rifle. Dr. Chen, perhaps you could explain to our host exactly what he's about to see? Chen held up a single bullet no larger than his thumb. This is a standard 7.62 millimeter armor-piercing round. The projectile weighs approximately 150 grains and will leave the barrel at roughly 2,800 feet per second. The core is tungsten carbide surrounded by a copper jacket. Zexthul's translator worked overtime to convert the primitive measurements into something comprehensible. 2,800 feet per second? That's barely supersonic. My plasma rifles achieve velocities of 0.3 c. True, Chen agreed. But consider this. Your plasma rifles require massive power sources, sophisticated targeting computers, and complex magnetic field generators. This rifle weighs 7 pounds and operates using a controlled chemical explosion. No external power required. A chemical explosion? One of Zexthul's eyes swiveled independently to examine the weapon more closely. You propel projectiles using combustion reactions? Precisely. Gunpowder has been used by humans for over 1,000 years. It's reliable, stable when properly stored, and produces consistent results. Zexthal's mandibles twitched with barely suppressed amusement. These humans were describing technology that most civilizations had abandoned before achieving spaceflight. It was like watching someone demonstrate fire-making with flint and steel to impress someone who could manipulate stellar fusion. Very well, the arms dealer said. Please, demonstrate this ancient combustion weapon against modern defenses. Chen raised the rifle, sighting carefully through the basic iron sights. No computer assistance, no holographic displays, no target tracking systems. Just human eyes and steady hands. He squeezed the trigger. The sound was unlike anything Zexthal had ever heard in his testing chamber. Instead of the high-pitched whine of energy weapons or the subtle hum of gravitational disruptors, the rifle produced a sharp, explosive crack that seemed to shake the very air. Even through the observation window's sound dampening, the report was startling in its primitive violence. The bullet struck the first target's energy shield in a shower of sparks. Zexthal expected to see the projectile deflected harmlessly away, its kinetic energy absorbed by the Andromedan shielding system. Instead, something impossible happened. The bullet punched straight through. The energy shield flickered and died as the tungsten core projectile continued its path, striking the target dummy behind the defensive array with a solid thunk. Warning lights began flashing as the target system registered a direct hit to its central mass. Zexthal's four eyes blinked in rapid succession, a sign of extreme confusion among his species. That's impossible. Energy shields are designed to deflect any incoming attack by redistributing force across the entire defensive matrix. Energy shields, Chen corrected gently, are designed to deflect energy attacks. This is a kinetic projectile with physical mass. The shield generators aren't calibrated to handle something with actual substance moving at ballistic velocities. But the energy output of your projectile is negligible compared to a plasma burst. Rodriguez stepped forward. Energy output isn't everything. That bullet weighs 150 grains and travels at 2,800 feet per second. By the time it reaches the target, it carries roughly 2,600 foot-pounds of kinetic energy. More importantly, all that energy is concentrated into a projectile smaller than your fingertip. The shield system detected the incoming projectile, Chen added, but its deflection algorithms are optimized for dispersed energy attacks. When faced with a small, dense object carrying kinetic energy, the system simply couldn't generate sufficient counterpressure at the precise point of impact. Zexthal stared at the disabled target in stunned silence. In 3 centuries of arms dealing, he had never seen an energy shield defeated so simply. The most sophisticated defensive technology from the Andromedan military, systems that could withstand direct hits from starship-mounted cannons, had been penetrated by what amounted to a metal pellet fired from a primitive tube. Perhaps, he said slowly, the reactive armor will prove more effective. Chen loaded another round. Let's find out. The second target featured Rigelian reactive armor, a marvel of adaptive technology that could analyze incoming attacks and restructure its molecular composition to provide optimal protection. The armor had successfully defended against everything from meson beams to quantum disruptors. Chen fired. Again, the primitive crack of gunpowder igniting. Again, the tungsten projectile streaking across the chamber at supersonic velocity. The reactive armor began its defensive sequence, sensors detecting the incoming threat and preparing to adapt its structure accordingly. The bullet arrived before the adaptation could complete. Reactive armor required nanoseconds to analyze, an attack and reconfigure its defenses against energy weapons that announced their approach with targeting lasers or charging cycles. This was more than sufficient. But the bullet provided no warning. By the time the armor's sensors detected the projectile, it was already striking the surface. The tungsten core punched through the partially adapted armor like it was paper. The target dummy registered another direct hit as alarms began sounding throughout the testing chamber. Impossible, Zexthal whispered. The reactive armor should have hardened against kinetic impact. It tried to, Martinez explained. But your armor is designed for predictable attacks from known weapon systems. Our bullets don't follow those patterns. They're too fast for the adaptation cycle and too small for the sensors to track effectively. Chen was already loading a third round. Shall we test the combined system? The final target represented the absolute pinnacle of defensive technology: energy shields, reactive armor, and electromagnetic interference fields all working in concert. It was the kind of protection reserved for command vessels and strategic installations. No known weapon in the galaxy could penetrate all three systems simultaneously. Chen took careful aim and fired. The bullet struck the energy shield, which flickered but held. The projectile's velocity decreased slightly as it pushed through the electromagnetic interference field. The reactive armor began its adaptation sequence, sensors screaming warnings about the incoming kinetic threat. For a moment, it seemed like the combined defenses might actually stop the primitive projectile. Then the tungsten core completed its passage through the energy shield, its mass and velocity still sufficient to overwhelm the partially adapted armor. The bullet punched through all three defensive layers and struck the target dummy center. Every defensive system failed simultaneously. Zex. Thule stared at the display screens showing the complete failure of three separate defensive technologies. His understanding of modern warfare had just been fundamentally challenged by a species that still used controlled explosions to propel metal objects through the air. "This changes everything," he murmured, his voice barely audible above the warning alarm still echoing through the testing chamber. The silence in the testing chamber stretched for several long moments as Zexathul processed what he had just witnessed. Three of the galaxy's most advanced defensive systems had been defeated by what his civilization would consider Stone Age technology. His four eyes tracked between the disabled targets and the primitive human weapon that had caused such devastation. "I need to understand this better," Zexathul said finally, his harmonic voice betraying a note of uncertainty that hadn't been there before. "These projectiles of yours, they're completely inert until fired?" Dr. Chen nodded, ejecting the spent cartridge from his rifle. The brass casing clinked as it hit the chamber floor, a sound that seemed impossibly primitive in the high-tech environment. "Completely inert. The ammunition requires no power source, produces no energy signature, and can remain stable for decades without maintenance. But how can something so simple be so effective?" Zexathul's elongated fingers traced complex patterns in the air, a nervous habit of his species. "The mathematics don't support this outcome." Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez smiled grimly. "That's because you're thinking like someone who's always had access to unlimited power sources and sophisticated technology. Humans developed these weapons when we had neither. We had to make every shot count." Captain Martinez gestured toward the disabled targets. "May we examine the damage patterns more closely?" Zexathul activated the chamber's retrieval systems, bringing the target dummies back to the observation area. The damage was immediately apparent. Clean holes punched through multiple layers of the galaxy's most sophisticated defensive technology. But what struck the arms dealer most forcefully was the precision of the damage. Energy weapons typically caused widespread destruction, melting or vaporizing everything in their path. These kinetic projectiles had created surgical wounds. "Fascinating," Chen murmured, examining the first target. "The energy shield generators are completely intact. The system wasn't destroyed, it was simply bypassed." Zexathul studied the damage patterns with growing amazement. "Your projectiles didn't even attempt to overcome the defensive systems. They simply ignored them." "Exactly," Martinez confirmed. "Our weapons evolved along completely different principles. Where galactic civilization focused on overwhelming defensive systems with superior energy output, humans focused on finding ways around those defenses entirely." The arms dealer began pacing again, his multiple limbs moving in increasingly agitated patterns. "This represents a fundamental paradigm shift in tactical thinking. If these simple kinetic weapons can defeat advanced defenses, then every military doctrine in the galaxy may be obsolete." "Not obsolete," Rodriguez corrected, "but certainly incomplete. Energy weapons still have significant advantages in many situations. Superior range, higher damage potential, precision targeting capabilities, but they also have vulnerabilities that kinetic weapons don't share." Chen opened a case that had been sitting nearby, revealing an array of different ammunition types. "We've brought several varieties for demonstration. Different projectiles for different tactical situations." Zexathul's eyes widened as he examined the contents. Bullets of various sizes and configurations, each designed for specific purposes. Some were larger, others smaller. Some had pointed tips, others were flat or hollow. The diversity was staggering. "This ammunition fires from the same weapon?" he asked, With minor modifications, yes. The basic firing mechanism remains constant. We simply adjust the projectile and propellant charge for different requirements. Chen picked up a bullet nearly twice the size of the first. This is a 50 caliber armor-piercing incendiary round. The projectile weighs 650 grains and leaves the barrel at 2,900 feet per second. The tip contains a tungsten penetrator core, followed by an incendiary compound that ignites after penetration. And this one? Zexthul indicated a much smaller round. 36mm hollow point, designed for maximum tissue damage rather than armor penetration. The bullet expands upon impact, creating a much larger wound cavity than its initial diameter would suggest. The arms dealer's translator struggled with the concept of deliberately designing ammunition to cause maximum biological damage. You have specialized projectiles specifically for harming living creatures? Among others, yes, Martinez confirmed. Humans have been fighting each other for millennia. Our weapons reflect that experience. Zexthul examined another projectile, this one with an unusually complex tip. And this? Fragmenting round, Rodriguez explained. Designed to break apart after penetrating the target, creating multiple wound channels and making medical treatment nearly impossible. Nearly impossible to treat? Zexthul's mandibles clicked rapidly. You design weapons with the specific intent of preventing enemy recovery? In warfare, Martinez said quietly, the goal is to remove enemy combatants from the fight as permanently and efficiently as possible. Wounding an enemy is often more tactically valuable than killing them outright, since it requires additional personnel to provide medical care and evacuation. The concept was alien to Zexthul's understanding of civilized warfare. Most galactic conflicts were resolved through technological superiority, with defeated forces simply withdrawing when their equipment became non-functional. The idea of deliberately targeting living beings with weapons designed to cause irreparable harm was both horrifying and tactically brilliant. Show me more, he demanded. Chen selected a round with an unusually thick casing. This is a tungsten core subboat round, designed for maximum penetration against heavy armor. The actual projectile is smaller than the cartridge casing suggests. It's surrounded by a plastic sleeve that falls away after leaving the barrel. Why use such an approach? It allows us to fire a smaller, denser projectile at much higher velocity. The result is dramatically improved armor penetration compared to conventional rounds. Zexthul was beginning to understand the implications. These humans hadn't just developed one primitive weapon. They had created an entire technological philosophy based on kinetic projectiles. Decades or centuries of refinement had produced specialized solutions for every conceivable tactical situation. What about rate of fire? He asked. Energy weapons can achieve thousands of shots per minute. Rodriguez smiled. Let me show you something. From another case, she withdrew what appeared to be a much larger version of Chen's rifle. This is a 30 caliber machine gun, fully automatic, capable of firing 850 rounds per minute. 850 rounds per minute of these kinetic projectiles? Correct. And unlike energy weapons, our rate of fire isn't limited by power generation or cooling systems. As long as we have ammunition, we can maintain continuous fire. Zexthul's mind raced through the tactical implications, a weapon that could fire nearly 15 armor-piercing rounds per second, each capable of defeating the galaxy's most advanced defensive systems, without requiring any external power source or sophisticated maintenance procedures. The logistical advantages alone, he murmured. No power infrastructure required. No cooling systems. No electromagnetic signatures to detect. Ammunition that remains stable for decades without maintenance. Now you're beginning to understand, Martinez said. Our weapons may appear primitive, but they represent centuries of refinement in a completely different direction than galactic civilization pursued. Chen loaded the machine gun with practiced efficiency. Would you like to see a demonstration of sustained fire against multiple targets? Zexthul nodded slowly, his worldview continuing to shift with each revelation. He was witnessing something unprecedented, a technological approach that challenged every assumption about modern warfare. These humans had stumbled upon solutions that the galaxy's most advanced civilizations had never even considered necessary. Prepare multiple targets, he ordered his ship's systems. I want to see what sustained kinetic fire can accomplish against a variety of defensive configurations. As the testing chamber reset itself for another demonstration, Zexthul found himself contemplating an uncomfortable possibility. What if humanity's primitive approach to warfare wasn't primitive at all? What if it was simply evolution along a path that more advanced civilizations had abandoned too early in their development? The implications were staggering, and he was only beginning to understand them. The testing chamber transformed as Zexthal's ship deployed a complex array of targets. Unlike the previous single-target demonstrations, this setup resembled an actual battlefield scenario. Multiple defensive positions were arranged at varying distances, each protected by different combinations of energy shields, reactive armor, and electromagnetic barriers. Some targets moved on predictable patterns, others remained stationary, and a few employed random evasive maneuvers. This represents a typical defensive formation from the Centauri border wars, Zexthal explained, his voice carrying a mixture of pride and apprehension. The engagement ranges vary from 500 to 2,000 meters. Each position is protected by military-grade defensive systems that have proven effective against conventional energy weapons. Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez hefted the machine gun, its weight seemingly insignificant despite its size. Unlike the sleek crystalline weapons that filled Zexthal's collection, the human weapon possessed a brutal, functional appearance that spoke of countless battlefield refinements. "Before we begin," Rodriguez said, "I should explain our tactical doctrine. Energy weapons typically engage targets individually, overwhelming each defensive system with focused fire. Kinetic weapons allow for a different approach entirely." Dr. Chen activated a holographic display showing the target array. "We call it suppressive fire. Rather than attempting to destroy each target individually, we can engage multiple positions simultaneously, forcing the enemy to take cover and disrupting their ability to return fire effectively." "Suppressive fire?" Zexthal's translator struggled with the concept. "You fire without specific targets?" "We fire to control the battlefield," Captain Martinez explained. "The psychological effect of continuous kinetic rounds impacting around enemy positions is considerable. Even if we don't achieve direct hits, we can prevent the enemy from operating effectively." Rodriguez settled into a firing position, the machine gun's bipod legs extending to provide stability. "Additionally, our ammunition is inexpensive enough that we can afford to fire large volumes without concern for resource conservation." "Inexpensive?" Zexthal's eyes widened. In galactic warfare, each energy weapon discharge represented a significant expenditure of power and resources. Weapons designers constantly balanced destructive potential against economic efficiency. A single round of this ammunition costs approximately what your civilization might spend on a standard meal. Chen confirmed. "We can fire thousands of rounds for the same resource cost as a single plasma rifle shot." The implication struck Zexthal immediately. Economic sustainability in warfare was a critical factor that limited engagement duration and intensity. If humans could maintain prolonged fire without significant resource depletion, they possessed a strategic advantage that extended far beyond mere tactical superiority. "Demonstrate," he commanded. Rodriguez opened fire. The sound was unlike anything Zexthal had ever experienced. Instead of the clean, precise discharges of energy weapons, the machine gun produced a continuous roar of explosive reports. The muzzle flash created a strobing effect that illuminated the entire chamber, and spent cartridge cases began ejecting in a steady stream, clattering against the observation window. The effect on the target array was immediate and devastating. Kinetic rounds struck defensive positions in rapid succession, each impact causing shower of sparks as energy shields struggled to deflect the physical projectiles. Some rounds penetrated immediately, others were deflected but caused shield fluctuations that weakened overall defensive effectiveness. The constant stream of impacts overwhelmed the reactive armor's adaptation cycles, preventing the systems from properly configuring for optimal protection. But most remarkably, the psychological effect was immediately apparent. Even through the testing chamber's sensors, the moving targets began taking evasive action, their programmed behavior patterns shifting from offensive postures to defensive ones. The random movement protocols increased their evasion frequency, simulating the panic response that living creatures would experience under such relentless assault. "Extraordinary," Zexthal whispered, watching the tactical display. "Your sustained fire is degrading defensive effectiveness across the entire engagement area simultaneously." Rodriguez paused her fire for a moment. "This is only the beginning. Watch what happens when we shift to targeted engagement." She resumed firing, but now her shots were carefully aimed rather than broadly distributed. Individual targets began falling in rapid succession, as tungsten core projectiles punched through their compromised defenses. The combination of suppressive fire and precision shooting created a tactical environment that the defensive systems were completely unprepared to handle. The defensive algorithms are failing, Chen observed, monitoring the target system's responses. They're designed to handle either sustained energy bombardment or precision strikes, but not both simultaneously delivered through kinetic projectiles. Within 30 seconds, half the targets had been neutralized. Within a minute, the entire defensive array was compromised. Rodriguez ceased fire, leaving the chamber filled with smoke and the acrid smell of burned propellant. Sexthul stood in stunned silence as the tactical displays showed the complete failure of defensive systems that had successfully protected Centauri forces throughout their border conflicts. These humans had just demonstrated that their primitive weapons could overcome defensive arrays that had been tested against the most advanced energy weapons in the galaxy. The ammunition expenditure? He asked weakly. Approximately 200 rounds, Rodriguez reported. Total resource cost equivalent to perhaps 2 energy weapon discharges. 200 projectiles that defeated defensive systems worth millions of galactic credits, Sexthul murmured. The economic implications alone could revolutionize warfare, Martinez nodded. But there's more. Dr. Chen, would you demonstrate our specialized ammunition effects? Chen selected a different rifle from their equipment cases, this one equipped with a telescopic sight and specialized barrel. This weapon fires specialized rounds designed for specific tactical situations. He loaded a round that appeared different from the previous ammunition, larger, with an unusual tip configuration. This is a high-explosive armor-piercing round. The projectile contains a small explosive charge that detonates after penetration. The demonstration target was a heavily armored position with multiple layers of protection. Chen fired once. The kinetic projectile punched through the outer defensive systems exactly as before, but when it struck the armored core, the explosive charge detonated. The resulting blast created significant internal damage that spread far beyond the initial point of impact. Internal detonation, Chen explained. The projectile delivers its explosive payload inside the target's defensive perimeter, bypassing external protection entirely. Sexthul examined the damage display with growing amazement. Your projectile carried its own secondary weapon system? Correct. We've developed rounds with various internal payloads. Explosive charges, incendiary compounds, electronic warfare packages, even biological agents. Biological agents? The arms dealer's mandibles clicked rapidly. You weaponize living organisms? In extreme circumstances, Martinez confirmed. Humans have experience with biological warfare, though we consider it a last resort. The point is, our kinetic projectiles can serve as delivery systems for virtually any payload. Rodriguez loaded a different specialized round. This one contains a localized electromagnetic pulse generator. When the projectile penetrates a target's defenses, it releases an EMP burst that disables electronic systems within a limited radius. She fired at a target equipped with sophisticated sensor arrays and communication equipment. The kinetic impact was followed immediately by a localized energy discharge that caused every electronic system in the target area to fail simultaneously. The projectile delivered an EMP attack directly inside the target's defensive perimeter, Chen noted. No external electromagnetic warfare necessary. Sexthul was beginning to understand that he wasn't simply observing primitive weapons, he was witnessing an entirely different approach to tactical problem-solving. Where galactic civilization had focused on developing increasingly powerful energy weapons to overcome increasingly sophisticated defenses, humans had developed projectiles that could carry the battlefield inside enemy defensive systems. This changes everything, he said for the second time, but now his voice carried a note of genuine awe rather than mere surprise. We're just getting started, Martinez said with a slight smile. Would you like to see what happens when we scale up to crew-served weapons? Rodriguez was already opening another equipment case, this one containing what appeared to be a much larger weapon system. This is a 40mm grenade launcher. It fires explosive projectiles designed for area denial and fortification destruction. Sexthul stared at the weapon with a mixture of fascination and growing concern. Each demonstration had revealed new capabilities that challenged his understanding of warfare. If these humans possessed portable weapons capable of delivering explosive payloads at range without requiring power infrastructure, the tactical possibilities were almost limitless. "Show me," he said quietly, his voice filled with the kind of respectful attention he had previously reserved for the galaxy's most advanced weapon systems. As Rodriguez prepared the grenade launcher for demonstration, Zexthol realized that his comfortable assumptions about technological superiority were crumbling. These humans might appear primitive, but they had developed solutions to problems that more advanced civilizations had never even recognized as problems. The demonstration was about to become even more impressive. The grenade launcher looked deceptively simple compared to the exotic energy weapons that surrounded them. Rodriguez handled the weapon with practiced ease, its chunky, utilitarian design a stark contrast to the sleek curves and glowing components of galactic military technology. Zexthol found himself leaning forward, his four eyes focused intently on every detail of the human weapon. "This system fires 40mm explosive projectiles," Rodriguez explained, holding up a round that resembled a miniature artillery shell. Each grenade contains approximately 32 grams of high explosive compound, with a kill radius of 5 meters and a casualty radius extending to 15 meters. Kill radius? Zexthol's translator worked overtime to process the unfamiliar terminology. "You design weapons with predetermined lethality zones?" Captain Martinez nodded grimly. "Human warfare evolved around the concept of area denial and casualty infliction. Our weapons are designed to be lethal within specific parameters, allowing tactical planners to predict and control battlefield effects." Dr. Chen activated a holographic display showing the target area. "We've set up a scenario representing a fortified position with multiple defensive emplacements. Each position is protected by standard energy shields and reactive armor, but they're positioned close enough together that area effect weapons can engage multiple targets simultaneously." "Area effect weapons," Zexthol mused. "Most galactic civilizations abandoned such approaches centuries ago. Too imprecise, too much collateral damage potential." "Imprecise can be an advantage," Rodriguez countered. "Sometimes you don't need to hit a specific target. You just need to deny the enemy the ability to use a specific area." She shouldered the grenade launcher, sighting through its basic optical scope. Unlike the sophisticated targeting systems used by energy weapons, the human device relied on simple mathematics and operator skill. "The effective range is approximately 400 meters, though we can achieve accurate fire out to 800 meters with proper trajectory calculation." "No computer assistance?" Zexthol asked, incredulous. "None required. The operator calculates trajectory based on range estimation, wind conditions, and target movement. It's a skill that requires training, but no technology. Infrastructure." Rodriguez fired. The grenade arced through the air in a ballistic trajectory that would have been impossible for energy weapons to achieve. Most galactic weapons fired in straight lines at light speed, making defensive calculations relatively straightforward. But the parabolic flight path of the explosive projectile created entirely new tactical challenges. The grenade struck the ground near the center of the defensive formation and detonated. The explosion was unlike anything in Zex's Thol's extensive experience with destructive weapons. Energy weapons typically vaporized or melted their targets with surgical precision. Gravitational weapons crushed objects into impossibly dense masses. Quantum disruptors simply caused matter to cease existing. But this explosion was violent, chaotic, and brutal in its effectiveness. The blast wave radiated outward from the point of impact, carrying with it thousands of high-velocity metal fragments that struck everything within the casualty radius. Energy shields that had successfully deflected focused energy beams were overwhelmed by the sheer volume of simultaneous impacts from shrapnel moving at supersonic velocities. "Extraordinary," Zexthol breathed, watching the tactical display. "Your single projectile engaged all 5 defensive positions simultaneously." "Fragmentation effect," Chen explained. "The explosive charge is surrounded by a pre-scored metal casing that breaks apart in a predetermined pattern. Each fragment becomes an individual kinetic projectile, multiplying the weapon's effectiveness exponentially." Rodriguez loaded another grenade, this one with different markings. "This is a thermobaric round. Instead of fragmentation, it creates a sustained pressure wave and temperature spike." She fired again, targeting a different defensive cluster. This time, The explosion created a massive fireball that expanded rapidly before collapsing back on itself. The effect on the target systems was immediate and devastating. Not just damage from the initial blast, but complete system failure as the pressure wave disrupted delicate electronic components. The thermobaric effect, Martinez explained, creates a dual-stage destruction pattern. The initial blast disperses an aerosol cloud, which then ignites to create a sustained explosion. The pressure wave can collapse bunkers and destroy equipment even through heavy armor protection. And this weapon is portable? Zexthal's voice carried a note of disbelief. A single soldier can carry and operate this system? Correct. The launcher weighs approximately 6 kilograms and each projectile weighs 230 grams. A single operator can carry enough ammunition for extended engagement. Chen produced yet another grenade variant. We also have specialized rounds for different tactical situations. This is a white phosphorus round for creating smoke screens and area denial. This one contains submunitions, small bomblets that spread over a wide area before detonating individually. Submunitions? Each grenade releases dozens of smaller explosive devices that scatter across the target area. The effect is similar to multiple simultaneous grenade detonations, but with much wider coverage. Rodriguez demonstrated the submunition round against a large target array. The initial explosion was relatively small, but it was followed immediately by dozens of secondary detonations as the bomblets spread across a 100-meter radius before exploding individually. The entire target area became a field of overlapping blast effects that no defensive system could hope to counter. This is psychological warfare as much as physical destruction, Martinez noted. The sustained series of explosions creates terror and confusion among enemy forces, even if they're not directly hit. Zexthul studied the devastated target area with growing comprehension. You've weaponized chaos itself. In a sense, yes, Chen agreed. Energy weapons are precise, predictable, and controllable. Our weapons embrace unpredictability as a tactical advantage. Enemy defensive systems can't adapt to threats they can't predict or model. The arms dealer began pacing again, his complex thought patterns evident in the intricate movements of his multiple limbs. The implications extend far beyond individual weapon effectiveness. Your approach represents a complete philosophical departure from civilized warfare. Civilized warfare, Rodriguez repeated with a bitter laugh. Humans learned long ago that there's nothing civilized about warfare. We adapted our weapons accordingly. But the collateral damage potential, Zexthal protested. The inability to precisely control destructive effects. Advanced civilizations abandon such approaches because they're too dangerous to use in populated areas. True, Martinez acknowledged, but that's exactly why they're effective. Most galactic civilizations have forgotten how to fight wars where collateral damage is acceptable. Their entire military doctrine assumes clean, precise engagements with minimal infrastructure damage. Chen gestured toward the destroyed target array. What happens when an enemy isn't concerned about infrastructure preservation? When they're willing to accept collateral damage in exchange for tactical advantage? Your weapons level the playing field, Zexthal realized. Technologically superior forces lose their advantage when the engagement parameters change to favor destructive chaos over precision control. Exactly. Our weapons aren't just tools for destruction. They're tools for changing the fundamental nature of conflict itself. Rodriguez loaded one final grenade, this one marked with unusual symbols. This is our most specialized round. We call it an EMP grenade. The explosion creates a localized electromagnetic pulse that disables electronic systems without causing physical damage. Interesting. And the range of effect? Approximately 50 meters radius. Any unshielded electronic device within that area will be permanently disabled. She fired the EMP grenade at a cluster of targets equipped with sophisticated sensor arrays and communication equipment. The explosion produced no visible blast or fragmentation, but every electronic system in the target area immediately went dark. No physical damage, Chen noted, but complete electronic warfare effect delivered by kinetic projectile. No power source required, no sophisticated jamming equipment necessary. Zexthul stared at the electronically dead target area with the expression of dawning understanding. You've created battlefield electronics warfare capabilities that require no infrastructure, no power generation, no sophisticated technology base. Correct. A single soldier with a grenade launcher can achieve electronic warfare effects that typically require specialized vehicles, and trained technicians. This changes the fundamental economics of warfare, the arms dealer whispered. If infantry portable weapons can achieve strategic-level effects, the entire concept of technological superiority becomes questionable, Martinez finished. Superior technology is only superior if it actually provides advantage under battlefield conditions. Zexthul fell silent for several long moments, his worldview continuing to shift with each demonstration. These humans had revealed weapons and tactics that challenged every assumption he had held about modern warfare. But more than that, they had shown him that his understanding of technological advancement itself might be fundamentally flawed. "I need to see more," he said finally. "You've shown me individual weapons. What about coordinated systems? Heavy weapons? The kind of equipment needed for large-scale military operations?" Martinez and Rodriguez exchanged glances. "We brought some examples," Martinez said carefully. "But I should warn you, our heavy weapons systems might be even more shocking than what you've seen so far." "Show me everything," Zexthul demanded. "I need to understand the full scope of human military capability." As the human delegation began unpacking additional equipment cases, Zexthul realized that he was about to witness demonstrations that would completely revolutionize his understanding of warfare, and possibly his entire business model as well. The equipment cases that the human delegation opened next were significantly larger than those containing their small arms. As Rodriguez and Chen began assembling what appeared to be much more substantial weapon systems, Zexthul felt a mixture of anticipation and growing unease. Each previous demonstration had shattered another assumption about the nature of warfare, and he suspected that the worst, or best from a business perspective, was yet to come. "This," Rodriguez announced, gesturing to a weapon system that required 2 people to assemble, "is a recoilless rifle. It fires 84mm high-explosive anti-tank rounds." The weapon looked like a primitive tube with basic sighting equipment, but Zexthul had learned not to judge human technology by its appearance. "Anti-tank rounds? Specifically designed to penetrate and destroy armored vehicles," Chen explained, holding up a projectile that was significantly larger than anything they had demonstrated previously. "This round carries a shape-charge warhead capable of penetrating 400mm of solid steel armor." "Shaped charge?" Captain Martinez activated a holographic display showing the internal structure of the projectile. The explosive charge is formed into a cone shape with a copper liner. When detonated, the explosion focuses into a superheated metal jet that can punch through virtually any armor material. "The physics are fascinating," Chen added. "The copper liner is compressed and accelerated to velocities exceeding 10,000 meters per second. At those speeds, the metal behaves more like a fluid than a solid, allowing it to flow through armor plating like water through paper." Zexthul studied the technical specifications with amazement. "You're describing velocities that approach those achieved by our most advanced particle accelerators." "Achieved through controlled chemical explosion," Rodriguez confirmed. "No power source required, no magnetic field generators, no sophisticated targeting computers. Just precisely engineered explosive geometry. The testing chamber configured itself for heavy weapon demonstration, deploying target systems that resembled actual armored vehicles, rather than simple defensive arrays. These targets were protected by multiple layers of reactive armor, energy shielding, and electromagnetic barriers, the kind of protection found on front-line military vehicles throughout the galaxy." "The effective range?" Zexthul inquired. "Approximately 1,000 meters for stationary targets, 600 meters for moving targets," Rodriguez replied, shouldering the weapon system. "The projectile is unguided, so accuracy depends entirely on operator skill and range calculation." "Unguided projectiles against moving targets at 600-meter range?" "Human soldiers train extensively in trajectory calculation and target prediction," Martinez explained. "It's a skill set that requires no technology infrastructure, but can be devastatingly effective when properly applied." Rodriguez fired. The recoilless rifle lived up to its name, the weapon's design channeling the explosive force in both directions to eliminate recoil. The projectile streaked toward the target at high velocity, its ballistic trajectory arcing slightly due to gravitational effects. The shaped charge warhead struck the target's frontal armor and detonated. Result was unlike anything Zexthul had witnessed in his extensive experience with anti-armor weapons. Energy weapons typically created large areas of melted or vaporized armor. Kinetic penetrators usually punched clean holes through their targets. But the shape charge effect was something entirely different. The copper jet, moving at impossible velocity, drilled through the reactive armor, energy shielding, and base armor plating as if they didn't exist. But more than simple penetration, the superheated metal stream created devastating internal effects. The jet maintained coherence for several meters inside the target, destroying equipment and creating secondary explosions as it encountered fuel and ammunition storage. Complete internal destruction, Chen observed, studying the damage displays. The shaped charge didn't just penetrate the armor. It destroyed everything inside the vehicle. The energy shielding had no effect whatsoever, Zexthul noted with amazement. Your projectile treated advanced defensive systems as if they were empty space. Shaped charges create physical matter moving at velocities that energy shields simply can't deflect, Rodriguez explained. The copper jet has mass, density, and kinetic energy, far exceeding anything that deflection algorithms are designed to handle. Martinez gestured toward additional equipment cases. That was our basic anti-tank weapon. Would you like to see our heavy artillery systems? Zexthul's mandibles clicked rapidly. You have portable artillery? Portable is relative, Chen said with a slight smile. This system requires a crew of 4 in about 10 minutes to set up, but it can engage targets at ranges exceeding 15 kilometers. They began assembling what appeared to be a small cannon, mounted on a lightweight carriage. Despite its diminutive size compared to the massive energy weapons that typically provided long-range fire support, the human weapon possessed an aura of lethal efficiency that was immediately apparent. This is a 105mm howitzer, Rodriguez explained. It fires high explosive shells using variable propellant charges to achieve different ranges and trajectories. Variable propellant charges? We can adjust the explosive power behind each projectile depending on tactical requirements, Chen confirmed. Maximum charge for longest range, reduced charges for shorter distances or when we need specific trajectory angles. Zexthul examined the projectiles with growing fascination. Unlike the sophisticated guided missiles used by galactic artillery, these were simple metal cylinders filled with explosive compounds. No guidance systems, no target tracking capabilities, none required. The weapon system uses ballistic mathematics to calculate firing solutions. Give us target coordinates and range, and we can place projectiles within 5 meters of the desired impact point. 5-meter accuracy at 15-kilometer range using unguided projectiles? With proper training and fire control calculations, yes, Martinez confirmed. The projectiles follow predictable ballistic trajectories that can be calculated using basic mathematics and environmental data. The testing chamber expanded its configuration, creating a long-range firing scenario with targets positioned at extreme distances. The scale was impressive. Most energy weapons achieved their maximum effectiveness within a few kilometers, but this human artillery system was designed for engagement ranges that extended beyond the visual horizon. Rodriguez and her team went through the firing preparation sequence, adjusting the weapon's elevation and azimuth settings using mechanical controls rather than computer systems. The process looked primitive compared to the automated targeting systems used by galactic artillery, but Zexthul was beginning to understand that primitive appearance often masked sophisticated tactical thinking. Fire mission prepared, Rodriguez announced. High explosive shell, maximum charge, target at 12,000 meters. She triggered the firing mechanism. The explosion was tremendous. Unlike the sharp crack of small arms or the focused discharge of energy weapons, the howitzer produced a thunderous roar that seemed to shake the entire ship. The projectile arced high into the air, following a parabolic trajectory that would bring it down on the target from above, rather than approaching in a direct line. 30 seconds later, the shell struck its target. The explosion created a massive fireball visible even at the extreme range, followed by a shock wave that propagated outward from the impact point. But what impressed Zexthul most was the precision. The shell had landed within 3 meters of the designated target. Coordinates despite traveling in an unpowered, ballistic arc for over 12 kilometers. Extraordinary accuracy, he admitted, but the flight time seems excessive compared to energy weapons. True, Chen acknowledged, but consider the advantages. No power signature during flight, making the projectile invisible to most detection systems. No straight-line trajectory for defensive systems to track and intercept, and most importantly, the ability to engage targets behind cover or fortifications. Behind cover, Martinez activated a tactical display showing the shell's flight path. Energy weapons must maintain line of sight to their targets. Our artillery can engage enemies hiding behind mountains, inside bunkers, or within fortified positions by using high-angle trajectories. The projectile approaches from above, Rodriguez added, striking areas that are typically unprotected because most defensive systems assume threats will approach horizontally. Zexthul studied the trajectory analysis with growing comprehension. You can attack enemies who believe themselves safe behind defensive barriers. Exactly. And that's just high-explosive shells. We also have specialized ammunition for artillery systems. Chen produced several different projectile types. This is a cluster munition shell that releases dozens of submunitions over a wide area. This one contains chemical agents for area denial. This shell is filled with tungsten penetrators designed to destroy armored vehicles through kinetic impact rather than explosive force. Tungsten penetrators? Hundreds of small tungsten rods that spread in a cone pattern after the shell opens. Each rod carries enough kinetic energy to penetrate light armor, making it devastating against personnel carriers and soft-skinned vehicles. The variety was staggering. Explosive shells, chemical shells, kinetic penetrator shells, illumination shells for battlefield lighting, smoke shells for concealment, electronic warfare shells that created localized jamming effects. Each projectile was designed for specific tactical situations, creating an artillery system that could adapt to virtually any battlefield requirement. The logistical implications, Zexthul murmured. The ammunition variety, the specialized effects, the range capabilities. You've created artillery systems that can provide tactical effects across an entire theater of operations. And all of it operates without requiring advanced technology infrastructure, Martinez pointed out. No power generation requirements, no sophisticated maintenance protocols, no rare materials or exotic manufacturing processes. Rodriguez was already setting up another weapon system. Would you like to see our missile launchers? You have missiles as well? Guided and unguided varieties, Chen confirmed. From shoulder-fired anti-aircraft systems to battlefield ballistic missiles with nuclear warheads. Zexthul felt his worldview shift once again. Nuclear warheads? Fission and fusion devices, Martinez said quietly. Humans developed nuclear weapons before achieving spaceflight. They remain a significant component of our military doctrine. As the implications of nuclear-armed kinetic delivery systems began to sink in, Zexthul realized that he was dealing with a species that had weaponized not just chemistry and physics, but the fundamental forces that powered stars themselves, and they had done it using technology that appeared primitive by galactic standards. The demonstrations were far from over, but already his understanding of warfare had been permanently transformed. 6 hours after the demonstrations began, Zexthul stood in his private quarters aboard the Prophet's Edge, staring out at the star field beyond the viewport. The human delegation had finally concluded their presentations, leaving him alone with the most significant paradigm shift he had experienced in 3 centuries of arms dealing. Every assumption he had held about warfare, technology, and tactical superiority had been systematically dismantled by weapons that looked like they belonged in a museum. The nuclear demonstration had been the final revelation. When Captain Martinez had casually mentioned that humans possessed fusion devices capable of destroying entire cities, delivered by missiles that required no external power source and could not be intercepted by conventional defensive systems, Zexthul had finally understood the true scope of what he was witnessing. These humans hadn't just developed alternative weapons, they had created an entirely different approach to warfare that rendered traditional galactic military doctrine obsolete. A soft chime indicated an incoming communication. Zexthul activated the display to find Martinez's image appearing in the holographic projection field. I trust you found our demonstrations educational? She asked with a slight smile. Educational, Zexthul repeated, his mandibles clicking slowly. Captain Martinez, you have shown me weapon systems that challenge the fundamental assumptions underlying 3 millennia of galactic military development. I'm glad we exceeded your expectations. Exceeded them? Zexthul's harmonic voice carried a note of incredulous amazement. You have obliterated them entirely. Your kinetic weapons represent solutions to problems that advanced civilizations never even recognized as problems. Martinez's expression grew more serious. Which brings us to the business proposition. Ah yes, business. Zexthul began pacing, his multiple limbs moving in complex patterns that indicated deep contemplation among his species. You wish to sell these weapons through my distribution network. We wish to establish humanity as a significant player in the galactic arms market, Martinez corrected. Your network provides access to civilizations and markets that would take us decades to reach independently. Zexthul considered the implications. His client base included military organizations from over 200 worlds, representing every major galactic civilization. Most purchased weapons to maintain technological parity with their neighbors, following established doctrines and tactical paradigms that had remained essentially unchanged for centuries. The market disruption would be significant, he said finally. Revolutionary, Martinez agreed. Every defensive system in the galaxy is designed to counter energy weapons, particle beams, and gravitational disruptors. None of them are optimized to handle kinetic projectiles. The economic implications alone, Zexthul murmured. Your ammunition costs are negligible compared to energy weapon power requirements. Your weapons require no exotic materials or sophisticated manufacturing processes. The infrastructure requirements are minimal, which means we can offer superior battlefield effectiveness at a fraction of the cost of conventional galactic weapons. Dr. Chen added, joining the conversation. Our profit margins will be substantial while still undercutting every competitor in the market. Zexthul's business instincts were beginning to override his shock at the tactical revelations. The initial market resistance will be considerable. Military procurement specialists across the galaxy will view kinetic weapons as primitive throwbacks. Until the first field tests, Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez interjected. Once word spreads about actual combat effectiveness, demand will become overwhelming. But the political ramifications, Zexthul protested. Many civilizations have treaties and agreements based on current weapon technology limitations. Your systems could destabilize entire regions, Martinez nodded gravely, which is exactly why we need a distribution partner with your reputation and connections. This transition needs to be managed carefully to prevent wholesale military upheaval. You're asking me to become complicit in fundamentally altering the nature of galactic warfare. We're asking you to become the primary broker for the most significant military advancement in galactic history, Chen corrected. The profits alone should be sufficient motivation, but consider the strategic implications. Do you want to be the arms dealer who introduced revolutionary technology to the galaxy, or the one who missed the opportunity? Zexthul's four eyes focused on different aspects of the proposition simultaneously, a ability that served him well in complex business negotiations. The profit potential was staggering. His competitors would be completely unprepared for kinetic weapon technology, giving him an insurmountable market advantage. The strategic value of controlling access to such revolutionary weapons would make him the most powerful arms dealer in galactic history. But the risks were equally significant. Military destabilization could lead to widespread conflict as civilizations scrambled to acquire or counter the new technology. Political upheaval might result in trade restrictions or outright bans on kinetic weapons, and there was always the possibility that some client might use human weapons in ways that would attract unwanted attention from galactic peacekeeping forces. What are your terms? He asked finally. Exclusive distribution rights for the next 5 years, Martinez replied. We provide technical training, manufacturing specifications for simpler systems, and ongoing ammunition supplies. You handle all marketing, sales, and client relations. Revenue split, 60-40 in humanity's favor for the first year, shifting to 50-50 thereafter. Zexthul's mandibles clicked rapidly as he calculated the financial implications. Even with the humans claiming the majority share initially, his profits would exceed anything he had achieved in decades of conventional arms dealing. Manufacturing rights? Limited licensing for basic kinetic weapons and ammunition. Advanced systems remain under human control. Training and support. We'll provide technical advisors for major clients and comprehensive training programs for military organizations that purchase significant quantities. Exclusive territories. You maintain exclusive distribution rights throughout the Orion Arm and the Perseus Spiral. We reserve the right to establish direct relationships with civilizations in the Sagittarius Arm. Zexthul considered the proposal from every angle he could imagine. The humans were offering him the opportunity to revolutionize galactic warfare while achieving unprecedented profits. The risks were substantial, but the potential rewards were beyond anything he had ever contemplated. "I have one additional requirement," he said finally, "which is, I want exclusive access to your most advanced weapons technology. Not just the systems you've demonstrated, but everything humanity has developed. I need to understand the full scope of human military capability before I commit to representing your interests." Martinez exchanged glances with her colleagues. "That would require clearance from Earth's military command structure. Some of our weapon systems are classified at levels that would require significant political negotiations." "Then negotiate," Zexthul said firmly. "I've seen enough to know that what you've shown me today represents only a fraction of human military technology. If I'm going to stake my reputation and business empire on marketing human weapons, I need complete transparency about what I'm actually selling." "We'll need time to arrange that level of access," Chen said. "Perhaps a visit to Earth itself would be appropriate." "Agreed. I want to see your manufacturing facilities, your research and development programs, your strategic weapon systems, everything." "And if you're satisfied with what you see?" Martinez asked. Zexthul looked once more at the star field beyond his viewport, contemplating a future where primitive kinetic weapons would dominate battlefields across the galaxy. The irony was not lost on him. The most advanced civilizations in known space were about to be revolutionized by technology that looked like it belonged in a primitive museum. "Then you'll have your distribution network," he said finally, "and I'll have the most profitable business arrangement in the history of galactic commerce." As the communication ended, and Zexthul began planning for his journey to Earth, he reflected on the day's revelations. He had begun the morning as a successful arms dealer, hawking conventional weapons to established markets. He was ending it as the potential architect of a military revolution that would reshape warfare throughout the galaxy. The humans had accomplished something remarkable. They had taken the galaxy's most sophisticated arms dealer and made him eager to learn more about weapons that fired metal projectiles using controlled chemical explosions. It was perhaps the greatest sales achievement in the history of interstellar commerce, and they were just getting started.